Okay, we are now live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for March 2nd, 2022, being live streamed on YouTube and recorded for later availability on the county YouTube channel. First order of business is the call to order. I'm Chair Claire Hall. Vice Chair Katie Jacobson is also present. Commissioner Doug Hunt is excused this week. We begin, as we do just about every first meeting of the month, with recognition of service milestones for current employees and also introductions of folks who are newly hired with the organization. And if any of the 10 folks or 8 folks who are being recognized for service milestones are online, when I mention your name, please feel free, turn on your camera, wave. We appreciate all of you. As I said, these are 8 employees with a combined 95 years of service to the people of Lincoln County. First up is Teresa Campina, 5 years of service in the assessor's office. Jolene Murray, 5 years of service in Health and Human Services. Our planning director, Anno Husing, celebrating a decade on the job. Patrick Doherty with the Sheriff's Office, also 10 years of service. The same for Sarah Myrick, who has been with the Clerk's Office for 10 years. Then in Community Justice Juvenile, Julia Stolvort, 15 years. Kelly Foley, 20 years in Public Works. And Terry Weaver, 20 years in Public Works. So thank you all for your service to the people of Lincoln County. And now we've got introduction of the new hires, and who's handling that?
I will be handling that, Commissioner. This is Jaylene Cook.
Good morning, Jaylene. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So we have 6 new hires for the month of February we would like to acknowledge. Lonnie Gentry is a transit driver, part-time non-benefited. Kimberly Melo Mais is joining us as an office assistant in Health and Human Services. John Hubbard joins the Sheriff's Office as a Deputy Sheriff Patrol. Tiffany Byers also joined Health and Human Services, and she's a Case Manager 1. Soren Colvin is also a Deputy Sheriff Patrol in the Sheriff's Office. And finally, Justin Layton, he moves into a full-time role as a Youth Care Specialist 1 for Community Justice.
Well, congratulations and welcome to the new team members. As always, we say we look forward to seeing you in 5 years to get your first certificate of appreciation and service pin, but our doors are always open. You don't have to wait 5 years by any means. Next up, we have a resolution number 22-3-2A recognizing Problem Gambling Awareness Month. And do we have the resolution in the packet, Casey? Okay, I will read it. In the matter of declaring March as Problem Gambling Awareness Month in Lincoln County, whereas problem gambling is a public health issue impacting more than 264,000 Oregonians of all ages, races, and ethnic backgrounds, and has significant personal, social health, and financial repercussions. And whereas problem gambling is estimated to cost Oregonians more than $500 million every year due to higher rates of bankruptcy, loss of relationships, criminal activity, loss of productivity in the workforce, and other mental health and addictions issues. And whereas thousands of Oregonians have successfully sought treatment and are in recovery along with their families and have benefited from the expertise of professionals in the treatment field who are dedicated to helping people recover from problem gambling. And whereas Lincoln County has dedicated their efforts to reducing the negative effects of problem gambling for all Lincoln County residents through balanced policies and effective systems of problem gambling services, such as targeted prevention programs and treatment services, education of the public about problem gambling, and the availability and effectiveness of treatment. And whereas the National Council on Problem Gambling and Lincoln County Health and Human Services invite all residents of Lincoln County to participate in Problem Gambling Awareness Month, now therefore be it resolved by the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims March 2022 as Problem Gambling Awareness Month in Lincoln County and encourage all citizens to support the National Council on Problem Gambling, Lincoln County Health and Human Services in their efforts to have the conversation with friends, family, patients, and clients about gambling addiction. And we have a couple of presenters from Health and Human Services online. Are you ready to go? I'm ready to hand the floor over to you for your remarks.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Boland. I'm the Problem Gambling Prevention Coordinator here in Lincoln County. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak about Problem Gambling Awareness Month and the activities that we have planned throughout March. Problem gambling impacts all ages and is often considered the hidden addiction. Two groups at particular risk are seniors and our youth, with 11th graders reporting higher rates of gambling than drinking and substance use. So this year, our youth-focused prevention efforts include incorporation of problem gambling education in the schools, youth-targeted social media to raise awareness, and my favorite is the inclusion of our middle schoolers within the county in a statewide problem gambling calendar art contest, which gives the kids an opportunity to think about gambling and problem gambling in greater depth while doing it in an artistic way. As far as for our seniors, we are conducting educational outreach with the help of local senior centers. As a hidden addiction, identification of problem gambling is essential and can be difficult. Next Tuesday is Problem Gambling Screening Day, and we have encouraged local healthcare providers to screen their clients for problem gambling, and we've included links on our social media so that people can do self-assessments as well. And then Azusa will speak more about treatment options here in Lincoln County.
Thank you, Lindsay. As Lindsay mentioned, the relationship between problem gambling, mental health challenges, and other addiction issues, comorbid mental health disorders, and problem gambling have an addictive and reciprocal relationship. Each influence intensifies the other harms to the individual with a gambling problem, to their families and close friends, and to the community. One study found that 57% of individuals with a gambling disorder had a comorbid mood or anxiety disorder. In a study conducted with 837 adult clients in the community-based mental health services, they found that the prevalence rate of problem gambling was about 8 times greater than the general population. Among the more troubling association found is that people with a gambling problem are 15 times more likely to take their own life, according to the largest study of its kind. For this matter, Lincoln County HHS will be hosting outreach presentation to the staff in the mental health treatment, including child and family mental health team, alcohol and substance treatment, primary care, community providers, parole and probation, and senior centers in order to identify problem gamblers and to inform gamblers and their family that hope and help do exist. Oregon uses that public health approach that combines prevention, harm reduction, and multiple levels of treatment, focusing on quality of life issues for gamblers, their families, and communities. In Oregon, there are intervention programs involving text messaging and phone counseling with a workbook, outpatient treatment, crisis respite care, residential treatment, hotel-specific and prison-based treatment program. In Lincoln County, we provide outpatient level of care. Treatment is free of charge, confidential, and it works. It is easily accessible by calling Lincoln Community Health Center at 541-265-4196 or Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-877 My Limit. I also wanted to mention that Gamblers Anonymous is being held every Friday, 7 to 8 p.m. at Reconnections Counseling at Annex Building. Thank you, commissioners, for this opportunity to help raise awareness of problem gambling. Thank you.
Well, I thank you both. And it sounds like you've got some really great partnerships in this important work and a lot of creative outreach ideas. I don't have any questions. I'll turn to Commissioner Jacobson now to see if she has any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. Thank you for the thoughtful presentation. I think that this is maybe, one of the addiction problems that maybe we don't talk about enough as a society. I think we talk more about drugs and alcohol, but not as much about problem gambling as we should. But no questions from me, but I'm ready to make a motion when you are ready for me to do that, Commissioner Hall.
I would be happy to have you make the motion now, Commissioner Jacobson.
Great. Can you scroll up to the top, Casey? Thank you. I'll make a motion declaring March as Problem Gambling Awareness Month in Lincoln County.
I'll second the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Again, thank you both for the great presentation. We move on now, and the next item is the adoption of the consent calendar. These are either routine items or items that have been discussed at previous meetings. Is there anything that Commissioner Jacobson or staff would like to highlight or remove? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's approved. And now we move on to discussion and information items. And the first up would be COVID vaccination update and indoor mask mandates for county properties and facilities. Florence Portal, our public health director, is online, and I believe Jane Romero, our health and human services director, is as well. So I'll turn the floor over to them.
Excellent. Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy March.
Yeah, great to see you both.
You too. Casey, can you bring up the presentation, please?
Okay, stand by. I'm not completely certain where it is here in our.
It's right there on the left of the book agenda.
Oh, okay. COVID update. I'm sorry.
Yep. No,
Okay,
no
so it'll
worries.
be inside this. Okay, gotcha.
It is inside this. Yes, thank you. Can you go to the next slide? All right, so the big highlights this week is that the indoor masking in indoor masking for the general population and our schools is going to lift earlier than what we talked about last week. It's lifting at 11:59 p.m. on the 11th of March. And so the reason for this is are a few different ones. One, the hospitalization rates have been falling quicker than anticipated. And, based on, a statement we got from our governor's office earlier this week, I think there is a willingness to align with what California and Washington states are also doing. So therefore, the entire West Coast is going to be dropping the mask requirements on Friday evening, next Friday evening. So the other big news is that quarantine is being paused for the general population, K-12 and childcare settings. And this will take effect on the same date.
Florence, could I ask exactly what it means by saying quarantine is being paused?
You can ask.
Okay, I'm asking.
So I think the idea is that because we have really high vaccination rates in Oregon, because we've had, through the Omicron surge, an extremely high level of folks who got infected with COVID, there is a thought that we've gained a lot of community immunity against COVID. We don't know how long this is going to last for. I think, people are talking about immunity for the next 90 to 180 days. And because the hospitalizations have dropped significantly, pausing quarantine at this time makes sense to our health officials. So just as a reminder, quarantine is happening still when somebody has been exposed to a COVID-19 case, and so people then were contacted and then asked to stay home for 5 days and get tested to see if they had contracted COVID. The other thing that we experienced through the Omicron surge is that because Omicron is so transmissible, our contact tracing was not as efficient and effective as it has been in the past, because when we knew about people being exposed, it was kind of too late to get to them and ask them to quarantine. So I think this is kind of the overall reasons as to why we're pausing. I think the term pausing is so that in the event we were to live through another surge of COVID, those guidelines might change based on hospitalization rates, and I think this is the main indicators that we've been communicated at this point. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that does. Thank you.
Okay. So the other thing, though, that we're learning is that we will keep on asking people to isolate when they are identified as a case, meaning when they have a positive COVID-19 test. So the isolation will remain at 5 days. And then the 5 days after their isolation period is over, we are asking that people keep on wearing a mask for another 5 days. Next slide. So going back to the mask requirements, and maybe this is where we might want to have a conversation. So there are no guidance at this time around mask requirements being lifted for healthcare settings. So that means that the mask requirement will stay in place after March 11th. And so masks are still going to be required in clinic setting and possibly other settings, because the healthcare definition is really broad. And so one message that is being kind of communicated out is that even though we're seeing less disease with the drop in cases, there is still a risk for people who are not yet vaccinated, people who are immunocompromised, people who are at higher risk or complications, or people who live with someone in one of these categories. And so for those folks, the recommendation is that they might want to consider still wearing a mask and taking other precautions so that they do not get infected with COVID and or they do not transmit the disease to the people around them. Do you want to have a conversation now about mask requirements, or how do we want to go about this? Otherwise, I can go through the rest of the presentation and then we can talk at the end.
Commissioner Jacobson, do you have a preference?
Let's maybe finish the presentation
Okay.
and come back to masks because
sounds-
I'm confused. So I would like to be able to have that discussion, maybe get through the rest of this first. Thanks.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, next slide, Casey, please. All right, so this is the epi curve for Oregon. And as you can see, the drop is pretty dramatic, which is good. I think yesterday we had only 751 cases statewide, which is really a good space to be in. We haven't been there in a long time. Next slide. So when it comes to Lincoln County, we ended February with a total of 885 cases being reported to us. So obviously this number is not the total amount of cases that likely happened in our community. As you can see, August was our Delta surge, and we were 100 cases higher in February than we were in August. Another good sign is that our test positivity rate went from 25% at the peak of the Omicron surge, and we're coming back down, and we're for last week at 5.2%, which is good, and hopefully that's going to come down a little bit more as we go through March. Next slide. So this is the epi curve by week in Lincoln County. So you can very much see on the peak of the surge in mid-January, and now a very nice and steep trend down with 85 cases last week. Next slide. So this is the comparison over the past few years. So we're still, in 2022, we have a caseload that is still way higher than what we've had experienced in the past. Next slide. This is the hospitalization data dropping significantly. We will be, we're under 500 people in the hospital with COVID as of yesterday. And so the projections are that the trend is going to keep on decreasing over the next few weeks. Next slide. So this is the hospitalization data for North Lincoln Hospital for the month of February. And, they've been doing a tremendous job between handling their staffing issues and, all that involves. You can see that we've had about, on average, like 1% with COVID in the ICU at North Lincoln in February. And they are doing pretty good in terms of bed capacity at this time. Next slide. Same for Pacific Community Hospital, doing pretty good. We had a patient who was vented for most of the months, but then no more than 4 patients with COVID at a time in the hospital. Next slide. Our vaccinations. So you will see a difference in the people boosted. I just realized yesterday, you have 2 options when you look at the data. It's either you look at the overall population and the percentage of people boosted against the overall population, or you can look at the 18 and over. And so last week, I believe I had picked the 18 and over, so we had a higher percentage. This week, I picked the wrong one. So this is 43.4% of people boosted in Lincoln County in the total population. Otherwise, in the 18 and older, we're at about 50%, which is really good. I think our older populations are really doing a good job at getting their booster shots. So, and we are keeping on providing clinics. We might make some adjustment. You can go to the next slide to our clinic model. So this is this graph kind of showing you the amount of vaccinations that are being administered in Lincoln County by all partners. And what is always of interest to me is I want to see of those vaccinations, what is the proportion of booster doses that we are providing? And it's been steadily staying at about 60 to 65%, which is a good sign. But as you can see, the administration of vaccine has declined pretty significantly. We are, I think, at about 341 doses last week. So that leads us, next slide please, to kind of reconsider. We're going to maintain the schedule of clinics for March, but we were talking about possibly looking at the numbers we are getting, and because on some of those clinics, the attendance is so low that we happen to waste a lot of doses, and so we will likely shift some of those clinics to either every other month, or maybe reduce the time that we spend at the clinic, because we don't want to burn out our volunteer pool either. They want to be working. And so when there is very little attendance, it's hard to keep them in there. And we just want to make sure that we're still able to provide access to folks when they're ready to come and get vaccinated. Next slide. All right, we're at questions.
All right, Commissioner Jacobson, do you have any general questions on this presentation?
No general questions, thanks.
All right, so let's go to the question about any mask requirements in county buildings. I brought this up after seeing the news. There wasn't an explanation, but even when the governor announced that we were going to a March 11th unmasking date, she said that the requirement for masking inside state government buildings would continue until March 31st. And I just wanted to check with our experts, see if they wanted to weigh in at all, in an abundance of caution, to see whether they would have recommendations. We look at a step like that. My gut instinct would be no, given the dramatic decline in our numbers. But if Jane or Florence would like to weigh in, I'd sure love to hear from them.
Well, so good morning, commissioners. So I think for Health and Human Services, there is not a lot of change. I mean, I think when you look at our offices, our clinics, the services that we deliver, we're still under a mask mandate, except for perhaps in maybe our administrative office. I'm not hearing anything specific with regard to some of our other more, concerning settings like our jail, maybe our probation and parole offices, other offices where we kind of have those one-on-one contacts. So, I think from my perspective, prudence is not a bad thing. I mean, I think one thing that we've tried to always do is follow the science. And, as I think you've heard from Florence's presentation today, the science is suggesting that hospitalization numbers are trending down. That's a good thing. And of course, the protections that we've had in place all along have not only been about keeping ourselves and our community members, our families, et cetera, safe, but also making sure that that we didn't overwhelm our healthcare system. So we're seeing those numbers trend down. And at the same time, we've kind of entered, a phase where so many Americans, and especially Oregonians, are vaccinated, we're boosted, and we have effective treatments now. So, I think that's why the masks are coming off across the land. And if any of you watched the State of the Union last night, you'll see most folks in the chamber did not have on a mask. But that we do still have those vulnerable environments here in the county. So I think, I guess my thought would be if you had any thoughts about continuing a mask mandate within the county, the thought might be to look at those more vulnerable settings.
All right, that's helpful. I don't know, Commissioner Jacobson, just thinking off the top of my head, maybe we do a survey of our management team and see if any of them, well, as we know, obviously in HHS clinics, masks will continue to be required, but see if any other departments perhaps have concerns and would like us to consider selective extension of the mandate. Or
I think as Director Romero said, healthcare settings and public transportation, we do have, county buses. Those are still subject to federal, requirements. So those two things still have to have masks. And I think in terms of people coming into our building, I think when the state lifts the mandate for indoor masking, that needs to lift in our building as well. Both because, I think it's time to do that, but also I think it would be very difficult for staff and very confusing for the public to have the state order lifted for indoor spaces and then have us kind of still doing that. I think it would put staff in a really difficult position. But in terms of, Jane's advice at looking at more vulnerable populations, I think the jail is the one that really comes to mind.
Mhm.
When they do have COVID in the jail, it can be, very difficult to deal with. And so there never was a federal, mask mandate that's still in place around the jail. There's just the state one. So I think maybe having a conversation with Sheriff Landers around what their plan is moving forward, that to me would be the most immediate kind of high risk vulnerable population. And I know they, test as people come in, and I think that's, still going to happen is my understanding. But to me, that's the high risk place besides healthcare and public transport that already have those masking requirements that are going to stay.
That makes sense to me, a good approach. So if we don't have anything else from Florence or Jane, we'll thank you for our weekly update and see you both next week.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to say, even though the mask mandate is going to lift and people are still, if they feel more comfortable wearing a mask around folks, this is still an option for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And and just going on that conversation, I think sending out, a note to staff and them teams saying, if you still want to wear a mask, you can absolutely do that. And I think we can absolutely still provide masks in the courthouse as people come in, and that can still be an option that people can choose to do. And I think that's fine. So I think in terms of our policy of mask wearing, we can still say in our personal rules stuff that people want to wear a mask, but they can do that.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Commissioners, this is Kristen Ewell, County Counsel. So are we okay to bring this back to amend our current courthouse facility and county building facility policy on masking to be in compliance with the state mandate that will lift at midnight or 12:59 on 11:59 on March 11th?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I think we do just need to have that conversation with Sheriff Landers because there might be a different policy that needs to go in place there or something.
Well, the sheriff is on, I believe, the
Oh.
meeting now. So see if you have any input on this.
Good morning, commissioners. For the record, Curtis Landers, Lincoln County Sheriff. I know that our staff has been working on that. Lieutenant Russell, I know that they met with Florence last week. Dr. Long, they're going to prepare a recommendation for me for early next week to discuss this further and decide where we want to go. I know that there's some Oregon OSHA rules that we still need to look at for workplace and consideration of that. So I know we're looking at that, see what the best practices across the state and just coming up with what's going to be best for our staff and our adults in custody. Right now, knock on wood, we don't have any staff out and no adults in custody. So I want to keep it that way.
Okay. Thank you for that perspective.
So if you do put it on for further discussion, I'll know more next week with what the recommendation will be coming down to me and what we'll decide to do.
Okay, yeah, we will. I think it will need to be a decision action item next week because that'll be our last meeting before the March 11th unmasking date.
So maybe we can just task staff, Council Yule or others to reach out to Lieutenant Russell and have those conversations so we're ready to go next week.
Yeah, I think the conversations have happened. They're just preparing a recommendation with some other study for me early next week. So okay. I'll review what that's going to be and let you know. Yeah.
All right, we have a plan of approach. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll keep Sheriff Landers on the line, along with welcoming Brian Daniels, who is the Lincoln County Fire Defense Board Chief, for a discussion of fireworks. And I think specifically the BOC is interested in exploring whether we want to follow the lead of some of the cities in the county and give ourselves the authority to ban the sale and use of fireworks if there are hazardous conditions. So, Chief Daniels, are you on the line?
I am, Commissioner.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today. Good morning, commissioners and guests. I want to start with a presentation. It's a PowerPoint that I crafted over the past few days. I did send that, and I'm going to start sharing my screen here. I'm going to turn off my video to conserve a little bit of bandwidth. So,
okay. And Brian, I am changing your role here should give you the abilities to share that screen. Let me know how that's going.
Okay, let's see if it spools up here. And here we go. Can everybody see this?
Yep.
Okay. So it's a quick one. I know there's a lot of questions when it comes to the county's involvement in unincorporated areas and regulating the sale and use of fireworks. Last November, the Fire Defense Board sent an open letter to county and city leaders in response to the request for the Fire Defense Board to ban fireworks in Lincoln County. And this started around June 30th and lasted until about the 3rd of July. We were in a little bit of a sticky circumstance where we had already authorized the sale of fireworks, and there was no ban put in place by local jurisdictions, including the county and the cities within Lincoln County. We did issue a safe guidance protocol, but we again had no authority to ban fireworks use. Several city and local governments had banned fireworks in Lincoln County by declaration or ordinance, but many in Lincoln County haven't. The city of Depot Bay, for instance, is an example. So this quick presentation is going to kind of go through a little bit of our legal boundaries and what it means for Lincoln County. This is a quick video that highlights a lot of the public's concerns, and it's actually some good media coverage over the questions a lot of people ask. So I'm going to play this for everybody right now.
Now, we're a few days away from the 4th of July, right? We've been getting so many emails every single night about fireworks. A lot of you are not fans. I mean, I know a lot of people are. We get a lot of emails from people who are not, especially this year. Liz sent me an email. She said, I fail to understand why we do not have a statewide fireworks ban in light of the unprecedented drought conditions and the heat that we have experienced so far. So we looked into this for you, and it turns out the governors of both Oregon and Washington actually cannot issue a statewide ban on this. Why? Well, it has to do with how laws are written. Oregon law only allows fireworks to be regulated at the local level. So since Governor Kate Brown can't really do anything, can't issue a ban, she's instead asked everyone to be, quote, mindful of fire safety and prevention this weekend. In Washington, the governor has his hands tied there as well. He can ban a lot of things by declaring a statewide emergency, but fireworks are not on that list. In 2015, he had his legal team check to see if he could ban them, but they told him he didn't have that authority. But like Oregon, local jurisdictions in Washington can and have banned them. More on that in just a minute. First, let's take a look at what are considered legal and illegal fireworks in each state. Oregon is already really restrictive in these regards here. The only ones allowed here are the things like the sparklers and the poppets and the spinning wheels and the small fountains, the small stuff. Firecrackers, bottle rockets, or really anything that shoots up into the air are considered illegal in Oregon, even in areas without firework bans. Washington is less restrictive. Things like Roman candles, shells, reloadable mortars, and those things that spin up in the air are considered legal there. But firecrackers, bottle rockets, and missile fireworks are banned everywhere unless you're on tribal land. Now let's get to this question here from Sylvia. What is happening with the fireworks ban in Portland? Can families still have driveway celebrations? So just about an hour ago, Mayor Ted Wheeler signed an emergency declaration banning the sale of fireworks in the city of Portland. Yesterday, Portland Fire and Rescue banned the use of fireworks in the city, but they had to wait for the mayor to ban the actual sales. Technical stuff, but that's the way it all played out. Now, fire crews say that they will not be patrolling the city looking for fireworks going off, and they do not want you to call 911 to report them, but they will be investigating all fires that might have a connection to fireworks. Other places around here have also issued bans, and some are going a step further, like Milwaukee. They are not messing around. They're going to have police going out and patrolling and looking for fireworks on the 4th of July. And if they catch you, it's a $1,000 fine for using fireworks. The big one on this list is Clark County, which has banned both the use and sale of fireworks. And this is pretty notable since Washington has looser restrictions on what fireworks can be sold. And a lot of people from Oregon, of course, drive up there to get their hands on the larger stuff. Now, if you need any reminders of the kinds of problems fireworks can cause, I'm sure you don't, but we'll show you anyway, like the Gorge, for instance. The Eagle Creek fire in 2017 was started by an illegal firecracker. It burned 50,000 acres, destroying a large part of the Gorge. And back in 2011, an illegal firework on the 4th of July started a 2-alarm fire at a restaurant and coffee shop in Northeast Portland, and that caused about $100,000 in damage. Now, we're a few.
So hopefully everybody's still with me. We touched base on what legal and illegal fireworks are, and that we understand the difference, I think, as the media kind of summed it up for us there. It needs to stay on the ground. It needs to maintain control. It can't fly in the air. It can't explode sporadically. Where can we use legal fireworks? Well, generally anywhere that doesn't have a ban. And so we'll talk about some terms like protected lands, private property. So again, in your driveway, authorized public properties, think of somewhere like a city parking lot, for example, or a retail parking lot where it's allowed, and some ODF lands when they're not in fire season. And what fireworks are illegal in California, we touch base on this. If the warning label says shoots flaming balls, probably illegal. To sum it up, in Lincoln County, fireworks use is illegal on all beaches. It is illegal to use fireworks in state parks. It is illegal to use fireworks on ODF lands depending on the fire season. So if they've declared a fire season to be elevated, it is illegal to use them. It is illegal, period, to use fireworks in all unprotected lands. And unprotected lands means areas where fire districts have no jurisdiction or response authority to provide fire protection. And some local public parks, depending on jurisdiction or ordinance, may also institute bans or declare fireworks use illegal on city-owned property or local public areas. the big question comes to us a lot from, what's the OSFM's role here? What's the regulatory body? And basically the OSFM is the clearinghouse that authorizes the sale or the permits for professional displays of fireworks in Oregon. They regulate things like the signs, the store displays, the fireworks booths. They ensure that the retailers have the insurance, they follow the laws, and they remain the specialists in the state of Oregon regarding fireworks use, disposal, sales, manufacture, etc. But they rely on the OSP, Oregon State Police, to enforce the rules and regulations if so needed. It's a very cooperative approach here. This is a enforcement and regulation matrix, and you can see in the far left column how fire districts are limited in the activities of fireworks use. Essentially, the top left corner is somebody applies to sell fireworks in a city or a district. The local fire district approves those sales. There is really nothing else beyond that. If a fireworks retailer or a professional display company wants to come in and give a display or have a display, something to the city of Newport or at the end of the Salishan Spit, the local fire department or district approves that signature or approves that application with local law enforcement. There's crowd control measures that need to be followed. Again, there's explosives that we're dealing with. So there's a number of things, but what I want to really drill down here is when it comes to enforcement of illegal use or the seizure, you can see the bottom three columns there, they all involve law enforcement. Local law enforcement, OSP, and the OSFM still maintains this very hands-off role where you see in the bottom right corner that they help facilitate OSP. Again, the OSP would rely on the OSFM to give the legal or the expertise in the room to talk about when the enforcement or seizure of fireworks is needed. The ORSs and applied OAR regarding fireworks, there's a number here. And this is kind of our guiding principles as fire districts when it comes to the enforcement, regulation, or the issuance of permits within each fire agency. ORS 480.140, it essentially places supervision of fireworks displays in the hands of local fire departments. Again, as we mentioned, if somebody wants to have a professional display here, the fire district or the authority having jurisdiction or agency having jurisdiction needs to sign that application to make sure that that operator of the fireworks display has taken all the measures to ensure a safe show. ORS 480.160 explains the role and regulation of sale, use, and manufacture of fireworks, but it also clearly explains that fire districts have no authority to prohibit these activities. We're going to talk about regulate and prohibit. OAR 837, 012, 0860 explains that if weather or other dangerous conditions exist, that a fireworks show should be postponed or canceled. And leading down to ORS 480.120 explains to us that law enforcement is responsible to enforce the provisions of 480.111 through 480.165, which is essentially everything fireworks in the ORS. Nowhere in these sections of ORS or OARs do fire districts or fire departments retain any law enforcement rights. And getting further down, when we talk about ORS 480.160, section 4, subsection C, a rural fire protection district, such as we can call it Lincoln County Fire District, is specifically prohibited by state law from banning fireworks. Again, our hands are tied. This is where it gets confusing for everybody. The manufacture, sale, use, or discharge of fireworks may be regulated by the governing body of a rural fire protection district, subject to the following conditions. The regulation shall not prohibit the manufacture, sale, use, or discharge of fireworks, which is authorized by ORS 480.111. Basically, it all comes down to the way state law is written. And in both Oregon and Washington, not even the governor has the power to ban fireworks statewide. Oregon law only allows fireworks to be banned at the local level, county, city, tribal. We talked about displays, and those are much easier to regulate. And they're also, by Oregon administrative rule, they're easy to shut down if a danger exists. So if we're under drought conditions, or we have crowd control issue, or we have other instances out of our control, the local jurisdiction, the authority having jurisdiction, it could be law enforcement or fire, can shut down the fireworks display. 480.120 of the ORS, law enforcement officers of the state, county, and municipality shall enforce the provisions of ORS 480.111. This is basically the entire, as I said earlier, everything related to fireworks, and it also includes if a county government, a local government, a city, or a tribe puts in place regulation, or excuse me, an ordinance by declaration, for example, that the local law enforcement authority would have to enforce that. This is the letter we sent out. I want to go on record and say this was a very neutral letter. I personally am a fan of fireworks. I like them. I like celebrating our nation's independence. I have to do so safely. This letter was not meant to send the message that the Fire Defense Board is telling local leaders and the county to ban fireworks. It was merely a letter, an open letter highlighting the difficulties we encountered last year. That started around June 30th. We had a public outcry. We had a lot of local leadership calling the Fire Defense Board and their local fire chiefs asking to ban fireworks. And summing it up, going back, you could see that our hands are tied, especially when we had already approved the sale of fireworks. Now, understanding that Lincoln County has a lot of nonprofit organizations and a lot of, I guess, entrepreneurs that sell fireworks, it was bad timing, essentially. But statewide, there was a lot of bad timing. We were in a drought, we were at record heat levels, and we were already experiencing increased call volume. Again, summing up the ORSs here, just touching back to ORS 480.160. What we're dealing with is the need for a cooperative approach. As we talked about the letter that was sent out to county and city leadership, as well as the tribe in November, we needed to know the status of local ordinance that was going to be established so that fire districts could or could not approve or deny the sale of retail fireworks. So essentially what we're talking about is a fire district has until January 1st to either approve or deny a fireworks sale. And what that comes down to is if the county chooses to allow fireworks, or let's just say a local government chooses to allow fireworks past that January 1st deadline, or let me back up. If a local government chooses to ban fireworks after that January 1st deadline, those people may still be entitled to sell fireworks in that jurisdiction. So you can understand the confusing part of allowing fireworks to be sold, but banned to be used. Again, touching on that cooperative approach, we still issue the permits. The permits come through here. City fire departments are to follow city ordinance if they're so established. If municipalities fail to adopt ordinance before January 1st of that affected year, a fire chief may authorize the sale and use of fireworks in that municipality. If Lincoln County were to issue a ban on fireworks now in March of 2022, some authorized permit holders may have issues as permits may have already been granted. Example, the city of Depot Bay banned fireworks by ordinance in December of 2021 before the January 1st deadline. Therefore, Depot Bay Fire will not allow a permit for the sale of fireworks in Depot Bay city limits following the specifics of that ordinance. So through agreements or by local governance, law enforcement resources may enforce the ordinance. Fire districts, departments do not have law enforcement authority. We touched on that. Mitigation measures. So what can Lincoln County do? If we find ourselves in a drought issue or an extreme weather event, or we have depleted resources, the county can ban the use of fireworks. There is a number of examples. The cities of Portland, Estacada, Tualatin, on and on, did so by emergency declaration or resolution in summer of 2021, some as late as July 3rd, including the counties of Multnomah, Clackamas, and Clark, as we saw from the news report earlier in the presentation. Again, it comes down to local governments that relies on county leadership and city leaders to put those bans in place. This is an example of the Multnomah Declaration, cites what they did and what they went through as late as, I believe it was June 29th. It was a rule following a state of emergency for Multnomah County as a result of the drought and the extended weather conditions that Multnomah found themselves under. They set the ORSs. And as the media reported, fire districts or fire departments did not, they weren't out actively patrolling. And I don't think law enforcement really had much to do other than respond to the number of use of illegal fireworks. But again, at least they did something, they put it on the books. So what's the Fire Defense Board's role in this? Our role as local fire chiefs and fire service leaders is to support the local ordinances or declarations if within our district. The unique thing about Lincoln County is we can't identify a single fire district that doesn't have an incorporated city within it. So the city of Depot Bay, the city of Lincoln City, the city of Newport, all the way down to Waldport or Yachats. They have their own rules that they have to follow. And so they can issue or deny, or I'm sorry, they can put a declaration or ordinance on the books. The fire district's responsibility is to cooperate and work within those means. So it doesn't make sense to authorize the sale of fireworks in a city that has banned them by ordinance. We'll continue to provide public information regarding the safe use of legal fireworks if they're still allowed in unincorporated areas. With Lincoln County Sheriff's Office and the emergency manager, we'll provide public information to areas of impact regarding fireworks bans or emergency declarations. And we'll continue to work with city and local governments regarding the permitting processes and regulation. We will also, lastly, provide a channel of communication to local fire service leaders, to city, county, and tribal governments, meaning we want to be a conduit for those leaders to be able to reach out to local fire service leaders so we can all work together on this. I know it's a very sensitive issue, but when it comes down to it, what we're talking about is, I'm going to try to jump back on the screen here. How do I do it, Casey? Okay. So when it comes down to it, what we're talking about is on the heels of the Echo Mountain fire, there's a lot of sensitivity regarding fire danger, fireworks use, even open burning. These are questions that come to my office quite regularly, as well as every other fire chief in our county. You could see based on this presentation, our hands are tied, and it's up to local leaders to put these policies or ordinances on the books. It's up to local law enforcement to enforce those. And we want to be able to support either But with that letter, volunteerism is on a rapid decline in Lincoln County. Our call volume is on a rapid increase, and we are resource. I guess we're less a lot of resources than we were many years ago. And as soon as last year, people flooded the coast. Thanks to some other city leaders saying, go to the beach and use your fireworks. They flooded the coast, and we were quite busy on 4th of July. We had very limited resources. We didn't have a lot of property damage in Lincoln County, but we did have 3 separate fireworks related fires. And based on traffic, population, and our decreased personnel pool, we were stressed. So with that, I don't know if I've answered anything for you, but I'm essentially putting the ball in your court, Board of Commissioners, on how you want to move forward, and let you know that the Fire Defense Board here is here to support you regardless of your decision.
Thank you very much, Chief. Did you indicate that you sent your presentation, the slide deck, to Casey?
Yes.
Miller? Okay. Yes. Casey, would you make sure all 3 commissioners and our legal team that it's forwarded to all of us?
Yes, absolutely. An excellent presentation.
Thank you. Before we hear from Sheriff Flanders, I'd like to ask Commissioner Jacobson if she has any questions for Chief Daniels at this time.
I don't have a question for Chief Daniels right now, but I do have a question for Council Ewell, because I think there was something in the presentation that needs to be clarified. You want me to ask that now, Commissioner Hall?
Yeah, why not? I'm sorry.
All right, so I think, and it was an excellent presentation. Thank you, Chief Daniels. Many times you had said that the county has the ability to ban, and my understanding from going through this last year is that we have the ability to ban inside the unincorporated parts of the county, not the whole county. And additionally, my understanding, there was no applications for sales permits inside the unincorporated parts of the county. That was just inside cities this year. But I just want to check with Kristen and make sure I am understanding that or remembering that correctly.
That's correct, Commissioner. We don't have any, sales that occur in the county, to my knowledge.
Yeah, and if we did do a use ban, that would just be for the unincorporated parts of the county, not for the entire county.
Correct. The cities would have to provide their own orders to that effect.
If I may, Commissioner Jacobson, when it's the sales permits go through the fire district, the local fire district, the county wouldn't know if the sales are happening in the unincorporated areas. So for instance, in Depot Bay's fire district, in an unincorporated area in Lincoln Beach, for instance, at the Chester's Thriftway Market, that application comes to us every year for the sale of retail fireworks. That's in an unincorporated area. And I authorize the sale or the use of, or I'm sorry, the sale and display of fireworks in an unincorporated area. So that's where it gets down to. Also, the Shell station, or it's now the 76 station. No, it's a Chevron. Sorry, in Depot Bay, applied this year for a fireworks retailer permit, which I denied because it's in city limits. The city has an ordinance in place which bans the use of fireworks. It doesn't make sense for the fire chief to allow the sale of fireworks in a jurisdiction that has banned them by ordinance.
Can I make a suggestion just at this point that if we go down this road, and that's still a question at this point, that we might want to include as if we were giving ourselves the power to ban use, that we also look at sales just as a precautionary measure, because if more cities go the route of empowering themselves to do bans, then it's conceivable that more sales sites could migrate to the unincorporated areas. Just a thought.
Yeah, we would need to get on that much earlier.
Right. If we did it this year, it wouldn't be effective. Yeah.
And I will say my reason for really pushing having Chief Daniels on our agenda today is, last year we started having this conversation about banning fireworks in late June, and it was just simply too late. It was just too late. I know there's a lot of concerns, with enforcement as well. And so I feel like if we're looking at, a potential ban for drought conditions, frankly, we should have had one last year, in my opinion. We absolutely should have banned the use in unincorporated parks. I want to make sure that we're having the discussion now on what we think triggers that, and making sure our partner agencies are, anticipating or ready to go if we do that. And that, as our drought committee follows the trends for, water and drought conditions, that we're maybe making that call ahead of time instead of, June 30th or July 1 or what have you. I think that we need to be talking now about what's going to trigger that, or the process we want to use to make that decision. But I think, come the very end of June or early July, it is simply too late to coordinate the response, but also to have it be impactful and meaningful. People have already bought their fireworks a lot of times by July 1st or 2nd. So it's a little late for that action. But I think if we work on that earlier, it can be more impactful.
I agree. Sheriff Landers, we'd appreciate hearing your perspectives on this issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. It was a good presentation. As you have seen, that the enforcement comes down to local law enforcement. It'd be us to enforce that, the sheriff's office. I think that's the most difficult piece, is the enforcement. I don't think I'm going to be able to weigh in on an opinion whether you should have a ban or not. I don't want to see any fires, obviously. And as Chief Daniels put, we want people to celebrate responsibly. But it's the enforcement piece. If we put something in there, I just need to let you know that it's going to be very difficult just because of staffing levels. And even if we're fully staffed, on the 4th of July, the number of people that come in, and our call load shoots up tremendously, and it's difficult to keep up with just the basic calls. To add something else makes it very difficult. I'm not trying to sway your decision on this at all. I'm just saying that the enforcement piece will be very difficult. It'll probably be limited to just if there are instances where something happens, there will be a way to go in. A significant incident, if a fire is started, that we would have something to go in. And besides other violations of the law, we can actually add on this one to it. But the other, as far as going around and proactively looking for this, I just really don't see it happening.
Commissioner Jacobson, any questions for the sheriff?
No questions. Thanks.
Well, thank you both for some very valuable input. And now I think we should discuss what we want to do, whether we want to go forward with consideration of this or let the matter drop.
I guess my feelings is because we kind of missed the window to deal with sales. I feel like at this point, it's maybe looking at, conditions. And so it's, March 2nd, it might be slightly early to do that, but I think we should bring this back maybe the first week of May, and look at, there's water conditions reports that come out of our emergency management office every week. And I think by then we can start looking at what the trends are going to be. It's already being said that the trends are going to be very dry this year. But I think, I think May might be a good time to start circling back and looking at if we want to do sort of a drought conditions type ban of fireworks. And
well, I'd like to, I like taking a serious look at the beginning of May, what the conditions are, but I'd like to suggest that we ask our legal staff to do some research and at least have the framework of an ordinance ready for our consideration. So it doesn't have to be a rough job if we are going down that route in May.
I think that's a great idea. So we're not behind. Yep.
Okay, Council Ewell, is that okay with you?
Sounds good, Commissioners.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you, Chief, and thank you, Sheriff. Now we're up to public comment, and PIO Miller, have we got anybody in the waiting room for live public comment?
Oh, stand by. Let me reclaim my abilities to, okay, so public input. There is no written input. I can tell you that. I checked the smart sheet and we have received none. But I do see possibly Alan Shen. And Alan, are you here for public input? Sent an ask to unmute request to Alan. There we go. Alan?
Yes.
Are you providing public input today?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, then if anybody else needs to provide input, it doesn't seem like there's anyone, but we could use the raise hand function. But Chair, I think we don't have any today.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Jacobson, do you have anything to share? You're
talking unmuted.
Oh.
Yeah. Just a couple of things. I think, as I said, maybe last meeting or 2 meetings ago, the state is going to pay for 2, possibly 3 developments of tiny home villages in North Lincoln County. And so working to identify appropriate partners, might be plural, might be one, not sure yet, to actually run those facilities, and looking at models from other places. You know, is this owner occupied? Is this, rentals? Is this a co-op type situation? So really trying to get kind of the more like social design done instead of the, construction design, which the housing developers will do for us, so that we can move that project forward, hopefully as quickly as possible. The other thing I was going to say is that last Friday was the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM, Offshore Wind Task Force for Oregon, of which I sit. And that was the announcement of the proposed leased areas for the state. There is not a lease block proposed for Lincoln County, but most of the South Coast, starting in Lane County, basically stretching down through Douglas and maybe halfway through Tecumseh County as a potential lease block, and then maybe a 10-mile stretch of not a lease block, and then another one goes basically from the middle of Coos down to maybe the first quarter of Curry County, and then maybe a 20-mile gap, and then another one from the rest of Curry down to the California border. And there's also lease blocks in California as well. So huge amount of space potentially for offshore wind, and frankly, a lot of concerns coming up around both the BOEM process and also birds. We do know that windmills can be very detrimental to birds, and we already have some endangered marine bird species such as the albatross there. And then of course, really potentially scary for the fishing industry, looking at impacts to those fisheries and spillover effects that we would see when those areas were shut off. So we are working with some of our federal elected officials to see if we can at least get the timeline to be a little more in our favor. BOEM is saying that with the identified knowledge gaps that they have already, and they identified several, one being birds, one being the sablefish fishery, and some other things, that they would be giving themselves 6 months to collect that data, 6 months to kind of, get that data out. And then by this time next year, those lease blocks would go up. And that is just frankly not enough time. Having done research myself in my past career, 6 months for good research is, just not enough time. So we're working on trying to make sure that the process can be as inclusive as possible, and that we have, good data going into that system to make decisions from. But for those that haven't really been paying attention, I think it's probably time to start paying attention on that, because things are sort of heating up and moving forward. And that's all I have. Thanks.
All right, thank you very much. And the one last thing I have to do before we adjourn is remind everybody that Monday morning at 9, we will have our office staff meeting for the BOC and County Council office conducted virtually. Then 1 week from today, Wednesday, March 9th, 2022 at 10 a.m., our Board of Commissioners meeting, also to be conducted virtually. For now, we stand in adjournment. Have a great day, everybody.